This was like a healing experience. And I'm sure Swami was not aware of anything, that he didn't consciously do anything, just the vibration of his presence.
Namaste, great souls. I'm Darshan. This is another one of the 60 minutes interviews with our Ananda Europe pioneers. I'm here at the house of Shantidev. We will talk about his house later. First I wanted to say a few things about the early days of Ananda. We know that Ananda Europe, the master's work, Yogananda's work in Europe, was started by Swami Kriyananda and a few American devotees. But then very soon, after maybe a few months, other people came, Italians came, and then people from many different countries. And right now, I have counted about, in our community at Ananda Assisi, people, residents from about 10 different countries. So this is really an experiment in world brotherhood. We're all living together here. So the Germans are very present here. We have quite a few devotees from Germany who have lived here and who are also part of the early days, the pioneering days of master's work in Europe, and one of them was Shantidev. I'm very, very happy that you were willing to do this interview with us. Mm-hmm. And of course, we always start at the beginning of your spiritual life, even though that might have been eons ago. But let's stick to this life. Can you tell us something about where you come from, first of all, where in Germany, and then how you came onto this spiritual path?
Thank you, Darshan, for doing that service. Well, I was born in Munich, and I grew up basically in the periphery of the city of Munich, in a small village called Emmering, near Fürstenfeldbruck. It's about like half an hour out of Munich. And the spiritual life, when it really started, it's always like it's not an easy question to answer. There have been some clue moments in my life. One was when I was 15 years of age. I was lying in my bed, and I had a skylight over my bed, and I was looking into the stars. And I don't know where it came from, but suddenly I reflected about, the dimensions of the universe. Not only like the extension of the physical universe, but like how the same pattern is in the atom, like it is in the sun system, like it is in the solar, in the galaxy. And somehow I felt like an insight into something very, very deep. And at one point I suddenly saw a spiral of light which came out of the smallest tiny micro quantum world of the subatomic level, and the same pattern extended into the macro world. So I did not know what the heck was going on, but it was very, very strong. And after I felt I understood something, and I had no idea what I understood, there was like this type of insight where you don't, it was like beyond me. And that took me like years later, when I was reading books about yoga and meditation, and about the cosmology of the Vedas and the yogic cosmology, and also of ancient Egypt, that I understood, well, I was not completely like crazy in that idea. There was something real behind it, of the fractal holographic universe, which is now much talked about.
So that deep inner experience you had while you were lying in bed in a little village near Munich.
Yes.
And you were 15 years old.
15 years of age, yeah.
And that started it all in this lifetime.
Yes, and there started, an completely change in my life. In a sense, before I was a fairly good student, I completely was, from that moment on, my interest shifted away to like trying to understand life. And I was
It shifted away from academics.
Academics from, like, and I felt like in school they haven't really understood life. I had the strong feeling, that God, they don't really know what they're talking about. I had a feeling there was something more, but I couldn't really articulate it or understand it myself. So this search started, which brought me, when I was 17 years of age, it brought me to, like, in this type of time of my life, I was completely confused. There was like the inner longing for something different. Outwardly, there was like school was not going well. I dropped out and argued, with my parents. And at one point, I just got out of here. I left and I went basically for a hike for half a year through Europe, which, looking back now, was one of the best times of my life. I really gave it time to myself to heal, all the traumas of my childhood, and to look deeper into the mirror of who am I. Interestingly, this search started in Assisi. I came here to Assisi.
By train?
I came by train, then I hitchhiked, and I met a man who was like if somebody hasn't heard of Omram Mikhail Ivanov, he was the secretary of Omram Mikhail Ivanov, like he was a Bulgarian yoga master. And he introduced me into meditation in Lermo di Carceri, from all places in the world.
Ananda was not here yet.
Ananda was not. It was 1983. Or, yeah, 1983. And I had nothing particular happened in that meditation, but there was a very strong understanding and yearning I felt there are different dimensions in my being which I want to explore. This is what I want to do. I was very clear, this and this and this is not very interesting. Okay, I want to explore the inner dimension of my own being. And from that moment on, interestingly, I stopped eating meat until now. I've never, I think, never eaten even a small piece of meat or fish or whatever. Spontaneously, and then stopped smoking and drinking and so on, in that moment. So it was like a real shift happened in Assisi.
Wow.
And interestingly, 7 years later precisely, I came to Ananda.
7 years later.
7 years later.
So I know you also as a very bhakti yoga, devotion-oriented devotee. And am I wrong when I say that your first insights were philosophical and therefore also maybe typically German?
Somehow, yes, but it was beyond the mind. I thought and reflected about the universe. It started with a deep reflection about the dimensions and the pattern. But at one point, I went beyond it, and there was like something, which I felt more than I understood, which was the undescribable.
They say the same about Einstein. They say the same about Planck. I think their most important discoveries started on an intuitive level.
Yeah, it's like,
so maybe you were in that type of consciousness.
There must have been, now looking back at the time, there must have been like a natural intuitive insight. Yeah, I think so, because like I had actually completely forgotten about that event until like 30 years later, basically, when I started to read about quantum mechanics and spirituality, when I heard about the fractal holographic universe. I said, okay, that's...
I already knew this.
Actually, yes, like that, and also, after so many decades, I understand now, because there were changes in my life from that moment on, that there was something real. Because you can...
In that experience,
because you can sort of see whether something is real if it changes you after. And also like the moment in Assisi, it changed me.
Even though there was nothing particular that happened during your first meditation?
No, there was no vision or something like that. There was only like, there's some dimension in my being I want to really explore.
And a commitment to meditation.
And a commitment to meditation.
And stopping eating meat.
And stopping and changing my life, completely. And from that moment on, basically, I start walking. First, I hitchhiked a little bit, did painting on the streets to make some money. and then I walked, I walked all the way through Spain and south of France, and it was a great purification.
Then you came back, and at what point did you meet your guru?
Well, I came back from that trip and didn't...
Sorry, did you feel that the secretary was not your guru, but just a very good teacher?
Well, he was just a good teacher who taught me like something about meditation, And I didn't have any contact with him after that moment.
Still an important moment.
Yeah, it was still an important moment, And when I came back from that trip, I read got the autobiography of a yogi and read the book, like...
In German or in English?
In German, And I read it from the beginning to the end, like in a few days. It was like, wow. Here's somebody, like many, even like you and many other people know that, it's like your friend, somebody who is talking through the pages to you. And it was for me, okay, that's what I want in life. Interestingly, in the same time, a Kriya Yoga master from India came to Munich where I lived. And obviously I said, okay, I want to go there and right away get the Kriya initiation and get enlightened in a maximum like half a year, 1 year, not more.
Youthful, how do you call that? Well, enthusiasm.
Yes, very. So, I went to that meeting and then decided to get the Kriya initiation, which unfortunately there was no real preparation, and...
Which branch?
It was a Sri Yukteswar branch.
Okay. Ananda?
Yes, Ananda. And very powerful moment, but unfortunately, being 18 years of age and completely green spiritually, I had a lot of expectations, like just reading the autobiography of a yogi, that you get the touch and you fall into samadhi and all that. Didn't unfortunately happen, and I left a little bit frustrated and maybe a little bit deluded, and which was all my fault, from wrong expectation. I tried to practice for some time, but then gave up on it because I really could not really calm the mind sufficiently. And as we know, for practicing Kriya properly, you need to have some capacity to calm your mind. My mind was all over the place. And this was... Anyway, from that moment on, I lived in Munich on my own, and spirituality and search for who am I and the divine was completely dominant in my life. It was actually the only thing I was really interested.
And we are still now in the mid-80s.
Mid-80s, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And how did you get to meet Ananda then?
Well, I was in Munich. I was around people, of different spiritual tracks, and I met people who knew Ananda Mohima, and there were ashrams and communities which I frequently visited. And at one point, actually, it might have been 1989, Shivani and Helmut Meyer Devi, Ram, and Diana, came to visit these places, and I met them. And before, interesting, there's another whole story I could tell, but maybe it's too long, I got, I got visited, make it very short, I got visited by a person, an insurance company person from all places, visiting like a 20-year-old young man. He knocked on my door and wanted to sell me an insurance policy, And he saw the pictures in my house, which was like other people had rock stars and soccer heroes on the wall. I had all the gurus on the wall in my house in Munich. And he saw all the pictures, and he saw Hari Ananda, and he said, "Oh, he is not good, he's just the same like Swami Kriyananda. He's like a betrayer, blah, blah, blah," and so on. And I didn't, to be honest, I didn't like that guy very much. He didn't inspire me at all. But I heard, he said, it's like this Kriyananda who created all these communities, And I said, communities, I'm interested in communities. I was from youth on, like since I was 15 or so, I was always interested in communities. It was one of my, I was very philosophic. I talked to my friends now. Idealistic. We have to change the world, and how can we do? Yeah, we have to create little communities and live better. I had this idea in my mind. And when I heard that a disciple of Yogananda did communities, I was very interested. And right after that man, this insurance policy salesperson left, I went down to my favorite esoteric bookstore in Munich and looked for Kriyananda and found The Path, and bought the book and read it in German. Suche nach dem Sinn in German. Yeah, it was like a shorted version. Read the whole book in a few days and said, wow, I like that. And it sort of was more or less the time when Shivani and Helmut Mayede came, and so they had a little meeting there, and I heard about they started a community in Assisi, and Assisi was for me like the feeling of the mystical place,
You already
I was here already, yes. And it was for me like there was something there, like an atmosphere, something I longed for in my heart, I want to live in that sort of feeling, of mystic lifestyle. And when I heard, oh wow, a community started there, I went to, it was like in spring 1990, I came first time to visit, yeah.
You remember the date?
It was like, I think it was about Pentecost time, like May or so.
Like 40 days after Easter.
Something like that. Yes, it was like in that time, yeah.
So you came here, and how did it happen that eventually you settled here?
Well, it was like, it happened completely, the choice, not by reason, but by feeling. I felt, you have to imagine, Ananda Assisi in 1990 is not like it is now. It's completely run down place, Outwardly, there's nothing attractive. There was no temple, only some funky houses, and full of humidity and mold.
Very cold winters.
Very cold winters. And a bunch of Americans, but the some power, which now I identify as Yogananda, this type of power and energy and consciousness was there. I could feel that, and I was very strongly attracted to that, And I remember when I left for my first visit, went back home to Munich, it's like being in love, I longed for that, to be there. There was like the feeling I want to be there. And even I started to, believe it or not, listening to choir music, which was not my favorite before. So I listened to the tapes of the choir music, to get back into that vibration. And my friend said, what are you listening to?
What is this? Yeah. So now you're here. and we are in the early 90s, and Ananda is not what, no way what it looks like now. Can you share some of the, austerity in that first period when you had to
Well,
face?
I like to sometimes tell this story when I first lived what we called Villa Godzilla or Villa Serena, which is like a little shed which was built, without windows, without any electricity, nothing there. And where the temple is now, where the temple of light is now, like behind it a little bit. And I lived there for 3 years, But for me, it was no austerity, to be honest. When I was 24, 25 of age.
Not for you. You were a young Spartan man.
Yeah.
But can you describe the outward aspects of it? What could have made it austere for other people?
Yeah, it was like there was basically no windows, even the winter. So you had to fight out the snow. And, the story, like it happened quite often.
Where was it precisely?
Behind the Temple of Light.
Okay.
There was like this building. On some old photos you see that. And it like happened frequently because with curtains we tried to keep out the cold, And we had a wood stove, actually. But, without windows, it does that much in winter. And often it happened that the wind blew away the curtains in the morning. I found myself like 10 centimeters of snow over my blanket. Actually, snow is a very good insulator.
Yeah.
And you stay nice and warm under your blanket. The only problem is to get out under the blanket. And, you have to walk through the snow to wash yourself and all that. It was quite rough, but great adventure, great fun, and we felt like pioneers, And
you were pioneers.
Yeah, sort of. Started to, there was no money, there was no. You remember, like often the winter when we didn't have many guests, there was hard to buy food, even, There was like a lack of the basic necessities, and it was a little bit like like a very tough ashram life or monastery life in the outward sense, to.
You came here, you had your lifestyle, meaning also you and your fellow Ananda residents in those days. You describe it as a very austere ashram life and meditation. You had long meditation. So when did you receive your first Kriya initiation here?
It took almost a year. And interestingly, because with a certain youthful arrogance, I said, oh, okay, I got Kriya already from an Indian master in the line of Sri Yukteswar. And but the spiritual director here, Diana, and other people in the council, maybe you should first practice, the Hong Sau meditation for some time and really become calm in your mind and do all the, the preparation properly. And
how was your mind in those days?
Well, my mind was, quite pretty active, but, by the meditation practice, there was hopefully some bettering. It became better and improvement in the trying to become more calm in the mind, being more peaceful. And, it took me more than a year living here before, it was also like a sort of I had to become humble, to be really ready for the Kriya initiation. And I still remember, Swami when he came, because before I hadn't met Swami Kriyananda. And he didn't live here, he lived in the US. And he came in 1991, and I had the Kriya initiation from him directly, which was very, very powerful. And he didn't give many Kriya initiations in those days. After that, anymore. There were only a few.
Excuse me if I interrupt you. I would like to go back a little bit. So a preliminary technique to Kriya is called the Hong Sau technique of
The Hong Sau
concentration.
technique, yeah.
How do you relate to that technique, then and now?
Before then, it was quite, not so easy to practice. It was like an effort, and I have to say now it is almost my favorite practice.
Wow.
It's probably the practice besides Kriya I do most, and I really find great peace and joy in that practice.
Okay, Swami Kriyananda came in 1991. He gave Kriya, so you got the initiation. It was for you like a lesson in humility, having to wait, and patience probably also.
Patience.
Can you share a few memories of Swami in those earlier days?
Well, the first time I met him, he was giving a little community satsang informal in the retreat building here. What
did it look like in those days, the retreat building?
It was, more or less like now, not so much different outwardly. Inside it was like not restructured. It was quite, rustic. And Swami was sitting in the chair with his Bermuda shorts and like a very colorful shirt,
So it was summer.
It was summertime, yes. I had a certain pre idea, preconception how a Swami should behave and look like, and he was not at all fitting that idea and that picture. And when I came in, he was just telling jokes, basically. Everybody was laughing. He was telling stories and jokes. But you could, I was very sort of sit down in the last row and trying not to be seen. And the feeling was, which I always had with Swami, there was a certain presence in the room, he was like automatically, he was the center of attention from everybody. And his voice, he had a very particular timbre of voice, which came like deep from the heart. And there was a certain magnetism around the sound of his voice. And whenever I met, over the decades, Swami Kriyananda, the feeling was always, that of somehow you were in the presence of somebody extremely conscious too. Somehow suddenly you behaved better, you were sitting more upright in the chair, and there was an aura, there was some power and aura. Even so, he never tried to impose anything on you. He was always like your friend, talking to you on the same level, never from top down. But still, hard to explain. It was like this energy of a subtle, deep peace and joy. In fact, the memory I'm having whenever I left the presence of Swami, after there was like a ring in the heart, which went on for like hours and days sometimes, of a subtle joy, a peaceful joy inwardly. And this was like his vibration. Whatever he did and talked about, this was also for me is the memory of him.
Thank you.
In that vibration.
Can you remember or share any more personal conversation that you have with him?
Well,
you don't have to. It's personal after all.
Well, I can tell a story, which was probably my last time I was with him a little bit longer before he left his body. It was at a yoga festival in Merano, in northern Italy. And, in those days, my job was, I was the director of our company, Inner Life. And we had a booth at the fair. And Swami was the main speaker at the event. When I drove down from here to Milano and I got sick, I got fever and I felt very, very, feverish and bad. And when I reached, there was not enough space, there was a mistake in the agreement that they gave us less space for our booth than which was agreed upon. So I got angry about it. And my back, I suffer from back pain. My unloading the truck, my back went out. I had fever. I was angry. My back was out. I was in terrible shape. And somehow I managed to settle all in, and organize the products. Then somebody of our Ananda group told me, hey, Swami would like you to come for dinner with him, And I said, oh God, I cannot present myself in my state of consciousness like I am right now. So I went into my room and tried to align my chakras and, we sort of settle in a little bit. And I went to the dinner sitting on his side, for the whole dinner. And, the conversation was about some politics, economy, some jokes, some, events of the day. Very light conversation. I helped him, because he was quite old already. It was a year before he died, and he had a hard time eating. So I helped him a little bit with his food on the plate, and gave him his medicine, and sitting on his side, the whole time. And I remember when I walked him out, to the hotel room. I saw him go into his room. There was like a feeling, this same feeling, of a deep inner peace and joy. There was something very strong, which didn't come from any words, from any conversation. And interestingly, I had no more fever and no more back pain. I was completely healed, and in a very high mood, My mood completely changed and shifted.
Thank you.
This was like a healing experience. And I'm sure Swami was not aware of anything, that he didn't consciously do anything, just the vibration of his presence.
Let's talk a little bit about, I have 2 or 3 more subjects. One is, if you can just express a few ideas about community life relating to money and prosperity. You can even talk about your role in that as a director of the company. Then about your own work, meditation art, and then we'll finish by talking about your house.
Okay.
Which is very special.
Okay.
So let's first talk about inner life, and generally speaking, how this community, the efforts in this community also generate something like prosperity, consciousness, and magnetism.
Yeah, this was a big and still is a big challenge. And for me, it was definitely because after being...
Excuse me if I'm interrupting. I'm just wondering, you have also been to the village.
Yes.
So you can compare notes. Can you also say something about that aspect here, prosperity, consciousness, magnetism, and as it works in the village?
Well, there's a main difference between the village and Ananda Assisi. In the village, basically, everybody gets a paycheck, for the work, and has to pay their own bills. While here in Ananda in Italy, we have maintained a group of what we call ashramite, people who have, don't get a real, paycheck, salary, and basically get food and lodging for free.
More monastic.
It's more monastic, like an ashram lifestyle is more monastic. And we have still a good group of people living that way. And I lived in that style for 12 years, and which was great and fun. And when I was asked to do business it was basically the opposite, which was my natural tendency. It was, I expected to live a life of meditation and transcendence and all that. But somehow my destiny brought me to be thrown in the cruel and cold marketplace of the business world, and for so many years, it was almost like more than 15 years, I basically was managing a business and grew a business, from very small size to a certain medium level, let's say, size of 15 to 20 employees and sales agents in every region and all that, So it was, I had to face, that part of my nature first of all,
Was it there?
It was, it probably in a seed it must have been there, but it was not my liking, I had to develop it as a service, and not as a personal interest for earning money and making prosperity. I had not much personal interest in it, but I understood going along that track, that it's all about balance in life, about equilibrium. Our community probably, and Swami often said that in those days of the 90s, that we were way too much following like an old age track of monastery lifestyle, and we need to become more like inclusive to all aspects of life and society, and therefore it is very important to be as successful in your outward endeavor and financially prosperous,
We live near Assisi, the city of Saint Francis, who married Lady
Poverty. Yes.
Do you think that has something to do with this sort of delay in this?
I pretty much believe that, there must have been some karmic vows,
So
to
you were
that.
going upstream
I was
in your efforts to
Yes.
create prosperity in business.
Yes, and there was also, I have to say, even in our community, there was, oh, this is way too worldly, and this is not us, And I still remember at one time, I started to go to India and bring products from India to sell, in our mail order catalog, in our boutique here and all that. And people said, oh, it's not us. And I remember at one point, Swami... Too commercial, and not only like our books and our music, which is like the restrictive version of what we're doing. And I remember Swami saying to that, who are we anyway? So that he broke that, completely. And, the beautiful, story was about Swami. Often when, he always wanted to have our mail order catalog, and we sent it to him, and then he made an order list. He ordered things from the catalog, and then
he did it
himself, yeah. And then I had to bring it over to him and explain every product, And then he had suggestions, why don't you do this? And I have seen in that place that article, which commercially would not have worked, But now I understand much more than in those days, that he wanted to let me know that he was caring about it, and he was participating about it. He was not sort of saying, this is not spiritual enough,
His heart was in it.
His heart was, and he wanted to give me energy.
Beautiful.
He wanted to give me energy in it,
So I know one of your friends who later became your wife. She said that she fell in love with those catalogs, and not knowing that it came from you, but there was a lot of your own artistic creativity also in creating the catalog, I believe. And that takes us to what you're currently doing. Now you have a business called Meditation Art. Can you tell us something about your products and the spirit that is behind it?
Yeah, art was always, big part of my life. I always liked to paint, and there was always creativity. I'm not a good administrator and things, but I like to create things, and at one point, Swami told me, I should maybe let go of the business. And it was also a time where many things in my life changed. And so it naturally, I don't want to even call it a business, meditation art, because it did not start as a business. And actually, it happened in a period when many things in my life changed, and I didn't really know what should I do next. I tried out many different, I tried out another business, I tried out with the art academy, and there were different community manager, there were different projects, tryouts, which didn't work out, also because there was no financial foundation for that. And somehow I started to just out of fun, create, dimensional mandalas and light sculptures, like I call them now. I started with a spiritual eye, and it from the beginning had a great resonance. I put it in Facebook, and people, were inquiring, can I have one? Can I have one? And shortly I was selling to 7 different countries in the world.
And that fast?
Very fast, yeah. In the beginning,
you had only a few products.
I had only one, basically, but the people were asking for it. And from that, I started to make more different types, and it became like a life-sustaining activity. But from the beginning, I sort of vowed inwardly that I don't want to go into the business mentality, because for many years I was in a business mentality, because running a business you need to be very rational, very calculative, and profit-oriented. And here, from being as a Divine Mother, this is your work, whatever comes, and it is never easy financially, you have to pay your taxes, and all that. But until now, I have to say, like, miraculous, I always get enough commissions. Even during the COVID times, I always got orders to come in automatically from all over the world. By now we have sold in 25 countries, and it's like a meditation to create them, and they are sort of inviting people to meditate. So this is the...
So that takes us to the last subject, which is also a piece of art, and that is your house here. You and your wife Radhika decided to build your own house here, which is in itself also a pioneering project. I think it's next to Swami's house.
Well, there's Jayadev's, Bonomi's, Andreas,
that. How did it come about, and what was the vision, the inspiration behind it? And you will see a few images of your house. It's very special.
Okay, it came, when Radhika and I came together, we felt that we wanted to create a place, more than a house, like a loka. We also call it Prema Loka. The realm of divine love, basically, like a place for people to create a vibration, basically, to create an energy, not just a shelter. And we know for many years experts in the Vastu Shastra, in the ancient Vedic architecture. Basically, you build the house like what I'm doing, as a yantra, as a mandala. There's a center, the divine center called Brahmastan, and all the space has a certain order around the center in a certain geometric pattern of proportions and so on. And in complete alignment with the directions and the energy lines of the earth. And so we wanted to do it right. So from the beginning, we started on energy level first. and then
I
only.
remember we were here with a group of people and we chanted the Mamrityunjaya mantra
Yes, yes.
108
Yeah, we
times.
did it several
Fire
times.
ceremony.
Yeah, fire ceremony for the land inauguration, for the the foundation inauguration, and also in the different steps of the planning. We did all the right measurements in the ceremonies to invoke the right energy and to build according the energy pattern. It all goes back to the vision when I was 15 years of age, because it's the same exact thing which we're doing. The spiral of the central energy line and the order around it. It's on one size scale of life, it's the house, and one scale is like the cosmic life. In one scale is the spine. Like the Brahmastan is the spine of polarity, the positive and the negative. And in the cell is the DNA, and it's always has a polarity and electricity, every cell. So it all happens in different scales, stages, and scales of size and dimensions. So the house is one. We wanted to add another dimension to our own lives. So we are creating still, or work in process. This place here, and we were so honored and blessed. Now we had Jyotish Devi here living with us for 1 month, which was just beautiful and wonderful. And we wanna make it a place for satsang, meditation, meeting, a place for traveling ministers.
It already is in a way.
It is already became. We have regularly meditations and meetings and all that.
It could go on forever. There's so much more that you could share.
Yes.
I know that, I can feel that. Of course, there is a limit to what we can do in 1 hour. But on the other hand, it started when you were 15 and you had that important experience. And I noticed that now, speaking about your house, you can say that still takes us back to that first basic experience. I think this is the best way to end our talk. And thank you so much.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much, Darshan.
Jai Guru.
Jai Guru.